Hi everyone, Bob Dietrich here with another edition of the ADHD Toolbox. And today's going to be a really cool conversation because as you probably know, I'm a brain development guy and we help children and adults with ADHD do brain development techniques and things like that. And one thing that we don't necessarily talk about in our program is the amygdala. And I have here today Kelly Biltz, right? And
Yes.
Kelly is a certified life coach and trainer, licensed trainer for the Sanity School. And she is actually going to take us through some brain education. We're going to learn about the amygdala and how the amygdala can affect people with ADHD and what you can do to overcome that. Now, Kelly is a mom turned ADHD coach, so she's experienced what a lot of you are experiencing out there that are struggling with their children, trying to figure things out. Well, she's been through that path, and I've talked to her a couple times here, and she's got some really cool content. So I'm so happy to have you here, Kelly. Thank you for coming on our program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for finding me.
Yes, yes. And I know in the ocean of people out there, and that's one thing that's cool about this program is, people find that they have ADHD or that their children have ADHD and they feel alone. And there's such a big, warm, loving community out there that can really help. And so, we're so glad that we found so many people that can help, and people like yourself that have some awesome training. So let's dig into this and talk a little bit about how to support your child when they are in a distressed emotional state, and how the amygdala is a small part of your brain, but it plays a big part. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the amygdala first. And what is the amygdala?
So the amygdala is a small almond-shaped part of our brain I call it our fight or flight. It's always on the prowl for situations that could keep us from, it's a stranger danger, right? Always looking at situations that could be potentially threatening for us or keep us in a state of anxiety, not turning in homework or time, not getting blocked on a problem,
Mhm.
social anxiety kind of thing. It is always on the lookout, and it's small and mighty. And I say it's mighty because in the ADHD world, a lot of the challenges fall within the executive functioning part of our brain, which is our frontal lobe, as you know, right?
Right.
And that frontal lobe encompasses 41% of our executive functions, which is basically how we plan our day, our time management, our planning, our emotional response, our working memory, our impulsivity. And what happens is when when we go into a state of anxiety, right, or an emotional distress, if I may, the
Mhm.
amygdala takes over. And that's why it's mighty, because the executive functioning part of our brain goes offline and the person is not able to really access what they need to calm down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. So what are some of the things that could occur, like some examples of things that could hijack our amygdala and cause it to, shut the executive function capacity down?
So there's a lot of things,
I
actually.
know.
I can share with you. It could be, so a lot of times, I'm going to circle back here to a situation with my son.
Sure.
A lot of times there's a lot that goes into an emotional distressed state, if I may. It
Right.
could be sensory, right? It could be not doing well in school. It could be social situations. And a lot of it comes with the challenges of just having ADHD,
Right.
right? As a result of not being able to, have all these distractions, following through, transitioning,
Mhm.
all those good things. There was a certain situation when our son before he was diagnosed, and it actually was a catalyst to why I'm here today. And I didn't know it at the time, so I love how things work out.
Yeah.
But I remember, and this will speak to a lot of lower school, elementary grade moms out there. I remember when our son came back from a field trip.
Mhm.
And great thing about field trips, they're out of school for the day, life is good. But for a sensory child with ADHD, he was exceptionally tapped out when he came home. And tapped out meaning super exhausted, hungry, tired. There was so much sensory input throughout the day, when sights, sounds, the movement of the bus. I mean, constant barrage of when you go to a museum, right? Or something like that. just complete sensory overload.
Right.
And his assignment for the day for that particular field trip was to take notes about an exhibit. So we had a little notebook, and I knew that it took him a lot of mental effort to actually write it down. So we get home, all's fine, we're talking about it, and he goes to in his backpack, and he left his notebook in the school on the school bus.
No, no. Okay.
And Bob, when I tell you that we just went from here a whole way, or really we went from here to a whole way to an emotional distress. I mean, the whole body changed. He started his, that little steaming bowl came out. I mean, the little nostrils were flaring, face got red, angry, emotionally just shut down. And I remember he was crying, he was stomping his feet. It was so incredibly heartbreaking as a mom, because I'm like, okay, well, it's okay. We can figure it out. I'll call the, I'll text the teacher, we'll email it. It's okay. I'm so happy that you just did it. All these reaffirming affirmations for him, right? Nothing was helping. So we went up to his room, and he was just crying, like could not console himself at all for almost an hour and a half. And what I didn't know at the time was what was happening in his brain, right? The only thought that was getting through to him was, I forgot my notebook. I forgot my notebook on that bus. So he was upset with himself. He knew how much mental effort it took him to even record that, right? And to write down with everything going on. And he couldn't get back to normal from there. He didn't know how to help himself. And I know now that in that state, that the best thing I could have done, and this is going to be really hard for some people to hear, the best thing I could have done was given him his time in his room and walk away. And I made a quick video about this a couple months ago, my Front Porch Friday, about honor your child and walk away. And what I mean by that is I was adding to his emotional distress by all the questions that I was peppering him. Well, what can I do? What can I do? I don't know. I don't know. And when I think about that, it's really true, because he doesn't know. He didn't know what he needed to calm down. Nothing was going to help. It's like that song, should I stay or should I go? I'm doomed anyway, because if I stayed, it was going to make it worse. And then I get ready to leave, and he's screaming and crying. So nothing I could do as a mom was helping him. But it was paralyzing to me. And when you opened this show here with me, and you said a lot of parents feel alone, I was that parent. I felt like I could not help my son I couldn't help my son in that situation. And I realized that it was something that was just a really big aha moment. That's something else, that I was not connecting the dots to what he needed. So that was a prime example. It literally took him about 2.5 hours, and I had to leave him alone crying profusely in his room. And it was gut wrenching. As parents, we just want to wave the pixie dust and make it all go away and take care of our children. And that's not helping. So that was one thing that I learned. And now looking back at it, I can snarkle and have a little fun with it, because I didn't know what I didn't know, but we're at a different place with it now. So.
Right. So, so when he's in fight or flight, and which is kind of what he's in at that point, right? And
Right.
he's like totally distressed, and he's got all these sensory things going on. By you peppering him with questions,
Yes.
you are adding to that sensory stuff, and he's not able to calm down. So you just need to leave him alone so he can calm down on his own, and then you can come back and go for a solution conversation.
Right. And that solution, another important part is that solution conversation may not happen. It's one of my points, is it may not happen for a week later or a day later, right? When you need to be down here, when he's nice and calm. I liken this to a volcano right here. Our goal is to have down here and not to be built up here, right? So when prevailing minds and everyone's calm, and it could be when you're working out with him, or when you're throwing the basketball with him, or when you're throwing the football. That's what I really learned, is if I really wanted to connect with my son, I started doing things with him. And by doing things with him, we could have this nonchalant kind of conversation, say, hey, when that happened, when you came back from the field trip, what could I have done for you? What did your body tell you that you needed? And what didn't I do right? And, we can have that conversation. And that's fun because then he's doing something that he's like, oh, that was a horrible situation. Oh, I just needed to be alone. No, you weren't helping me. You were hurting me because I didn't know what to tell you. And helping understand, well, what was your body feeling at that time? Felt like my skin was coming out of my body. It wasn't fun. And I couldn't control my thoughts. And I was so mad. I wanted to punch something. So sometimes that solution conversation doesn't come until a couple of days, and it's not something that you plan. It can just be something that when you're walking with your child, or when literally maybe when they're doing a Lego or something, when their mind is completely clear, free, happy, and that's when you really engage them, because that's when they can give you a good emotions are not where they were, and sort of he's over it, like he's done, which is a good thing, not remembering all that.
Got it. So that's crazy. So,
yeah. I know.
but it's great that you went through it. In that you now have solutions to help share with others that can help overcome that.
Right. Right. So one of the first things, and again, I think I said it's not comfortable, but walk away when nothing's working for your son or your child. I'm used to saying son because I have 2 boys. So with your child. And even more importantly, with the conversation that you can have is, what do you need? Like, where do you need to go when you're in that emotional state of distress? What does that look like for you? Chances are they need to be quiet in a dark room with something that they can just toy with in their hands, right? Especially he was coming off a huge sensory overload.
Mm-hmm.
So asking your child what they need. And I call it my safe place. And when I talk with people and coach people, it's find out what your child's safe place is. Where is that? And let them tell you where that is for them, right? It's not about saying, well, I think you should go here. And this is all about figuring out what's best for your child. So finding that safe place, being able to walk away. I'm sorry, but being able to walk away, as hard as that is, just know that your child knows that you love them, and you're honoring them and giving them their chance to just get themselves under control, if I may. And one of the other things is I have weighted blankets. We have weighted blankets throughout our home, and that is more of a tool, if I may. Mm-hmm. And what that does is just that really hard pressure for their bodies. I think you can probably understand what I mean when I say that. We have them down here in our living room. We have them upstairs, and she still loves them. So
and like go back.
I feel like you want to say something.
It's like you go back into the womb, like you feel safe, and it just kind of brings everything in.
Right. Yeah. Right. It helps reposition, because ultimately what you want to do is you want to reposition. You want to get that main thought out of their head so that they can access some other point of their body, and then start letting the amygdala know what's going on. And one of the best things, what helps the brain is oxygen, right? So we have to breathe through it. That's super difficult when your child's in a state and the last thing that they want to do is breathe. But breathing is oxygen. That is breath to the amygdala, is breath to the brain. That's how it processes, right? You know that more than I do. So having, walking through some breathing techniques, if available, is a huge part of it.
Right.
And then also repositioning sort of where they're paying attention to in their body. So taking a cold sip of something, having them against a wall, I'm looking around here, having them, grounding them somehow, right? So that they can feel another part of their body. They're not just out in space, which is probably why that weighted blanket helps as well. Mm-hmm. And then tapping into you heard about tapping into your 5 senses, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can smell, 3 things you can touch, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Just, again, repositioning that anxiety to help the brain say, okay, my human's coming back to me now. They're getting themselves in control. And then another technique as your child gets older, because he has anxiety in different ways. We don't have any of the meltdowns anymore, which is great because he's older. He's 13 now, almost 14. But what another great technique is to really just validate, right? Mm-hmm. You're mad because you left your notebook on the bus, right? I get frustrated as well when I leave things. There's nothing more frustrating than that. We all in our lives, right, ultimately want to be validated. And one of the best things you can do for your child is, so they know that you're relating to them, is just validate exactly what's going on.
Right.
I just had a situation with Bryce a couple months ago when he missed basketball practice, and I forgot to tell him that he had an orthodontist appointment, and I failed to tell him that he was missing basketball practice. Bad mom. I just didn't think about it, right? But he just hemmed and hawed. You forgot to tell me I'm going to go to basketball practice. You forgot to tell me. First thing, got in for 25, 30 minutes. This was going on. I'm like, okay, you're mad at me because I forgot to tell you you are missing basketball practice today. I didn't intentionally do that. I didn't think on my radar that I just didn't think about it. I didn't connect the dots. So acknowledging that, it sort of just stops that conversation or that emotion. And then I just said, okay, you can say it 3 more times and we're moving on. Like there's not anything else we can talk about here, kind of thing. So validate it, have compassion, it's all about transferring that energy within your body to help access your frontal lobe again, which will help you retain your working memory and remembering what will help you in that situation.
Got it. So it's really kind of, well, in that case, diffusing the problem by just saying.
Better word. Yes. Diffusing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You kind of just say, hey, you can't say anything else because I'm admitting that it's that. And then you give them the 3 chances and they probably don't even use those, right?
I'm like 3 more times after you're listening to it for 25 minutes, right? And that's the other thing where you borderline. So I think as they get older, so the emotional distress sort of happens in the lower school or the elementary school. And then you have this state of persistence in the middle and the upper schools when they can sort of process it. And I actually wrote a blog about it. It hasn't been published yet, but it talks about the persistency of ADHD because that was the only thought that was getting through his mind, right? You didn't tell me I'm missing basketball practice. And we couldn't get anywhere. We couldn't have any other conversation until we nipped it in the bud, kind of thing. And so it turns into a persistent state. And I love that he's persistent, but it can borderline to be eventually annoying, if I may. Right. So you're helping him know his limits and when to stop, right?
So let's kind of flip the script a little bit on this.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, and let's talk about adults. And so adults may or may not go through something similar to this, but they could have that obsessive part, right? Where their amygdala is hijacked and all they can do is focus on the problem that just occurred. But they can also have executive function challenges, right? Where they're not capable of doing certain things in certain states of mind until the amygdala calms down.
Right.
So can you give us a couple examples of maybe what an adult might go through? Like what are some of the executive function challenges that might happen first, and then let's talk about what are some solutions that they can use, which are going to be the same as the children, right? But what are some of the solutions that they can use to get back, to get that amygdala calm down and back into the flow?
Right. So I find that and it's sad because a lot of people live in a state of anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? And I think I shared with you, anxiety is a coexisting or comorbid condition of ADHD.
Right.
I feel like they're walking hand in hand and the anxiety is a result of the challenges of ADHD and executive functioning, right? So when you have executive functioning as an adult, where that plays out is in time management, organization, distractions, systems and tools. And that can play out with anxiety, meaning not having, I want to say that. I'm going to rephrase that. A difficulty staying on task, a difficulty planning out your day, maybe always running late, right? And then that leads into a really like a winding story that some people might have in their head. I'm always running late. I can never be on time. I thought that I was going to do this. And I find that sometimes it's hard to connect the dots between a thought and a fact. So a lot of times I'll hear my clients say, oh, I thought that we were meeting tomorrow, or I was trying to figure out, right? They're not connecting it the whole way, meaning make that thought a fact. How would you make that a fact? So I coach into that sometimes, and we might get I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I'll bring it around. We coach into that. making a thought a fact.
Mm-hmm.
So prime example of somebody missed a session with me. Oh, I thought that I was on your schedule for next week. Okay, well, how would you know that? What are some of the tools that you could have used? What do you know that to change that thought to a fact, saying, I know my appointment is tomorrow, or I know my appointment was today.
Mm-hmm.
So there was in that scenario, right? There was a planning of a day that was missed. So then there was a time management that was also missed. And then ultimately there was a tool that they didn't have to keep them on track.
Mm.
That's how that plays out. And then they're feeling bad, right? And then it's that constant story of, I'm not good enough, can never be on time, I don't have systems in place that work.
Right.
And that
Right.
constant story that they could have.
Yeah. And that's
That makes sense.
totally. And that's interesting with ADHD is that it kind of, it can be a spiral downward unless you manage it. And because you have these executive function challenges, they stop you from taking the behaviors that you want to, take to make yourself successful. So you miss a schedule or miss an appointment or you lose your keys or something. And then you put that belief into your head that because you have the evidence that says, that you're something, right? And that you're less than what you want to be. And so you develop this belief about yourself, which reinforces it and adds to the ADHD. And it just kind of goes downwards. And in doing all these interviews with all these wonderful experts, it seems like managing and getting coaching help is so important because it can help you reshape your beliefs about yourself, because it's not true what you're saying about yourself in those times.
That's
right?
funny that you say that, because I call them stories.
Right.
And I can always tell when somebody's coming with a story, right? Like, oh, no, hold on. We're forward thinking here. And one of the first things I say is, what's true about this story? Who told you about that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What is true? And half the time it's not, but it's just a story that is a constant, on a constant reel, if I may, that keeps going.
Yeah.
Another example is a great example of adult ADHD and is getting stuck with projects, feeling a state of overwhelmness. I think so many people, adults who have either been diagnosed or haven't been, is neither here nor there, are in this state of overwhelmness because not knowing where to begin, starting things right in the middle, not being able to chunk it down. In our industry, you've heard chunking, like you have to break things down into literally bite-sized pieces. I remember in our training with Lori that in my ADHD training, it was a great visual because I'm highly visual. And she's like, take a little bite of the elephant. Oh, wow, that was so good. Because you have to. And that's how you get to the bigger piece of your project. And so many people are in a state of overwhelm because it's just, it's up here and you need to bring it down here by planning differently, right? Say, okay, what's one thing I need to do today, and how, but in the same sense, you want to continue to motivate your clients as well to help them when they leave you or get off the phone, that they can say, okay, I can go and do these two things. Because sometimes coaching, you don't want to get them to a point where they feel in a state of overwhelmness because of what they have decided that they want to do, right? So one of the things that I always ask them is this motivating you, or is this stressing you out? And you need to we're not getting off the phone until we get to a place of you feeling motivated that, yes, I want to go and I'm going to do this one thing. I'm going to get my transcripts to get to college. That's one thing I'm going to do this week. And I'll circle back with you next. Those are the kind of things.
Yeah. And with regard to children, and the beliefs that you create in your mind around that, and the stories that you tell about yourself, because we all do that.
Right.
They get those beliefs in their head and those stories, and they carry them around well into adulthood and beyond. So it's important to switch that story, shift it, so you know what the facts are, and then start to create a new belief around it, so they can carry new belief.
And that's ultimately why I'm doing what I do, because so much of it, there's so many negative comments and thought patterns around it. And I'm like, no. We have to change the whole language around ADHD. This is not a life sentence of doom. Okay. They've got challenges. It's a brain wiring issue, right? You and I were talking before we started, like, what's normal anymore? Nothing is normal. my son's brain just happens to be wired differently than mine. I do not think,
Right.
or my husband's for that matter, I don't think how they do. And it's not this doom and gloom. Yes, it's challenging.
Right.
No question about it. They have different challenges, but they also have different strengths that I certainly don't have.
Right.
So
And that's
I
the
really,
beautiful part about ADHD is that they do have different strengths, and when you manage ADHD, you're able to access those awesome strengths. So that really,
right. And
so,
yes, and one of the other, to that point, is playing to their strengths. Those with ADHD or other complex, challenging behavior issues, like the positive parenting, the positive reinforcement, playing to the strengths, really, really works. It reaps a ton of rewards and self-resilience, and builds their self-esteem and their confidence. And after that situation that I was telling you about, I basically spent 3 years or 2.5 years just diving deep into everything I could find out about ADHD.
mhm,
And we changed our whole language and our parenting style around our son
that's great.
based on that. And it's amazing because pretty much everything we were doing was really not working. But I'm like, something has got to resonate with him. And we
Right.
changed our language and we started playing to his strengths. We started rewarding him. We started giving him accountability. Well, what are you willing to work towards, right? Instead of us taking things away. They just get immune to that. That doesn't work. Taking things away does not bode well, and it does not work, and you will not yield results that way with your child.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Well, this has been very eye-opening, very
Yeah.
awesome information, and proof that that the brain is a big part of ADHD. It is the
It is.
key part of the ADHD. So
Yes.
understanding the brain and understanding the pieces, the parts of the brain that are hijacking or causing the behaviors and the challenges that come with it can really
Right.
be helpful. First, I found that it increases the compassion when people understand that a lot of these, especially the children, have no control over it.
Right.
They are not being, out of control, well, they're out of control. They're not being brats, right? The word
They
brat,
don't want to be.
yeah, it's like, that is not even a word that is relevant in that case. It's,
Right.
they can't control it. And,
Right.
understanding that it's a brain issue that they cannot control, it just gives you so much more compassion that
Right.
this little girl
And
is.
they need, right. And they need to tap into that executive functioning. And if they can't access it, then they're going to be shut down. Right.
And if you can also have some tools like you've given, or some brain development exercises that help improve the brain function, then they'll struggle less. So that's
Right.
awesome.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this information. This is great. Uh,
Absolutely.
you're
Thanks
giving
for having
everyone.
me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're giving everyone a free gift today, and I was
Thank
excited
you.
to let them know what this is. And not
Yes.
everybody does this, so this is really cool.
Good.
It's a quiz, and it's called "What is your biggest challenge?" What is your biggest ADHD challenge quiz? And you can go to the link below, click on the link, and you can take the quiz and find out what your biggest ADHD challenge is. I think it will be insightful. All the awareness we can get is helpful with
Right.
ADHD.
And the good thing about that is it's only 10 questions, and your results fall into, because out for a couple minutes, I'll just say this really quickly. I was trying to figure out what to chat about and what to write about and everything for a few things. I said, well, if I really think about it, everybody that comes to me has either organization, time management, distraction, or system and tools challenges. So I broke that out.
Mhm.
So the quiz is based on those four.
Mhm.
And then your results come right to your email, and it's sort of my brain dump of all the tips and tools for that particular challenge. So if you're challenged with systems and tools, I get into that, and it's about a page and a half of all my brain dumps of stuff. I'm giving
Awesome.
this stuff away.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
So
So don't
that's what
just
my
get
quiz is.
so you don't just get the quiz and the results. You also get some information that'll help you with your results.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, exactly.
And if you want more information on how to get a hold of Kelly, you can find her at lovinggratitude.com.
Yep.
And that link will be below, as well as her email. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to Kelly and maybe ask her for a session or whatever, you can contact her there as well. So Kelly, thank you so much for being on our program.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and thank you for being a part of the ADHD Toolbox. This is a
Absolutely.
great tool to have in the toolbox. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. And thank you all for watching this episode of the ADHD Toolbox. We will see you on the next episode.